My name is Laura Chappell, and thank you for joining us on this presentation. We're going to be going through virtual event hosting. I'm going to be sharing with you the primary issues that you might come up against if you are looking at moving to a virtual event. Of course, with everything happening in the world, everyone is racing over to host virtual events. We've been talking with a lot of different companies, a number of folks who saw Core IT running, and a lot of folks that know that we've been doing webinars in the past. Our webinars, typically we pull 1,000 people at a time into our technical training webinars and things like that. So in this presentation, I want to share with you what we learned in Core IT and some of the key considerations when you're going to go into the virtual environment for hosting. A little bit about me. I am a protocol analyst. I have a company called Chapel University. If you need to reach me directly after this session, my email is on this slide. It's Laura@ChapelU, and our website is chapel-university.com. I live, eat, and breathe at packet level, looking at the communications, and especially in the area of hosting events online. I focus a lot on the bandwidth requirements from the presenter standpoint as well as from the attendee standpoint. So right now, we actually are tracking the traffic rates to see exactly what it takes to do this. We're on GoToWebinar today, so we are taking a look at what GoToWebinar is requiring. All right, I'm going to keep an eye on the questions area. So as we move forward, if you have any questions at all, oh my goodness. Michael, that is a long, long question. I'm going to have Brenda or Ginny take a look at that question there. Wow, we're going to have Brenda or Ginny look at that question there and respond to you on that one. That's a big, long one. Yes, the questions will be shared when they are answered. So when we answer any of the questions, we have the opportunity to say share that answer with everyone or share it just with that one person. And if I don't get to your question during this session here, go ahead and put all your questions in that question area. And then afterwards, I'm going to go through those questions and make sure that the questions were answered. Sometimes we'll end up with a great big list of wonderful questions, and we'll compile those into a small Q&A doc and send those out as well. So I live and breathe packets. I look at network communications, troubleshooting network communications, network forensics, and things like that. We have been doing live events. We've been the behind-the-scenes coordinators for the SharkFest event in the US and the EU for over 10 years. And I'm also a thought leader for the National Science Foundation for a grant dealing with jobs for the next 50 years. That's going to be significant because that is the reason why Core IT was created, this thought leader position. So I'll talk about that in just a little bit. In addition, I'm an advisor for the California Cyber Institute competition, advising on interplanetary communications, and I'm also co-chairperson for the High Technology Crime Investigation Association, the student outreach program, reaching out to that next generation in our industry and bringing them into the industry and hopefully making them feel comfortable and at home. All right, so here are the 4 sections in this presentation. We're going to start with the one critical mistake that I want you to avoid. And I am seeing everybody go and make this mistake right now as they move over into the world of hosting virtual events. So we're going to start off with that one. Then we're going to go through the top 3 elements of successful virtual events. These 3 items are key. You must master all 3 of these items in order to have a successful online event. Then we'll go through 6 key pre-event decisions that you need to make. Now, each of these decisions actually has subcategories in there, but I'll show you what those categories are. And then I'm going to take you behind the scenes into Core IT. I'm going to give you our statistics on when we opened Core IT and when the registrations really started picking up, how long it took us to put Core IT together. I'm going to bring up Core IT In the background, as an administrator, I'm going to show you some of the little tricks and things that we had in Core IT. But I want to start out by asking you very quickly, just what is your interest in this virtual event, or in virtual events in general? Is it that you're going to be hosting virtual events, you're going to attend virtual events, you're just curious as to how Core IT was created? Or maybe you're thinking about being a sponsor and you wonder, what are sponsors going to get out of it? I am going to tell you that. All right, so I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, quick, get your votes in, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm closing that poll out, and I'll share with you what that poll showed. So here we can see the distribution of the people in here. We have a lot of people that are considering hosting an event, and we have an equal amount that are just curious about Core IT. Core IT was a lot of fun, I have to say. We had a great time hosting it. We had a great time talking with people online and sending them from one booth to another booth, and just, it was just a really great experience. All right, so I have one more poll, because I'm just wondering, out of all the people in here, how many people actually went to Core IT and spent time with us in Core IT. Wow, I'm surprised at the results that are coming up in the back here, and I'll share those with you in just a moment. Very interesting. I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is fascinating. Wow. 50-50 here. I was sure that we were going to have 80% of the people coming from Core IT. So for the rest of you, please let me know how you heard about this. If you didn't hear about it through Core IT, did you hear about it through the emails that we were sending out? Because we were inviting a lot of people into this. Okay, I'm going to keep going forward here. We have a lot to go through. I do want to let you know that I have some gifts for you. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to tell you exactly how much it costs to put on an event like Core IT. I will tell you that we are doing event development. We are helping tons of companies get their events online. So I'm going to give you the pricing that it costs for event development and for the platform that we use, which is Engages. We'll talk more about Engages in a bit. I am also going to be sending you by email the virtual event checklist. It's a 5-page document that goes through the pre-event, the implementation during the actual live event, things that you have to think about, and then post-event, things that you need to think about. And if for some reason you don't get that checklist or you have questions about the checklist, you can reach our events team at events@chapelu.com, and they can help you with that checklist with any questions that you may have. But it is a great resource, something to look at when you're thinking about hosting those online events. So let's begin with the one critical mistake to avoid. If you don't remember anything else about this presentation, I hope you remember this one: square peg, round hole. A meeting or webinar platform is not a virtual event platform. A learning management system is not a virtual event platform. And a website hosting platform is not a virtual event platform. Each of those technologies, GoToWebinar, we're on GoToWebinar right now. This would not serve as a virtual event where I can have a conference, where I can have booths, where I can have the chat sessions going on in chat areas in there, where we're capturing demographics about the people coming into different booths, and we have a bunch of downloadable resources from different vendors and multiple sessions taking place at the same time. This isn't made for that. A learning management system is also not made for that. Learning management systems are much more static than a virtual event would be. So they are definitely not the same thing. And of course, a website hosting platform, oh my gosh, we're hearing about folks who think they can take Wix and turn it into a virtual event. Best of luck with that. You are going to spend way too much time and way too much of your energy trying to make that square peg fit into a round hole. And you'll see this as we move forward and I go through what the elements are we are really interested in bringing into an online event. You want a virtual event platform when you're hosting a virtual event. It has all the bells and whistles that you need, and I'll go through what those are. So the top 3 elements of successful virtual events, and again, for those of you that are just arriving in right now, some of the late folks here, you can put your questions for us over in the questions area so we can respond to those questions. And at the end, I'll be giving out some stuff. So 3 elements of successful virtual events. Number 1, content is king. If you don't have anything exciting that will draw people into your event, or people come into the event and the content is weak, that event is going to fail. So you've always got to remember that no matter how glitzy and glossy you make your event, no matter how many chat areas you put in there, no matter how many colors you use and how many sessions you're offering, if that content isn't strong and targeted properly to your audience, then it's going to fail. What I'm showing you right now on the screen is a sample of a 3-track agenda for a virtual event. This is Core IT's early development spreadsheet that I had. You can see by the title of this, the date of this is February 3rd. Now, Core IT started on March 24th. So here's where we were on February 3rd as far as putting in sessions into the various blocks. And I'm going to give you a big tip right now. If you look at our time code on the left-hand side here, if you look at these times in this agenda, you're going to notice something interesting. And that is that our technical sessions only ran for 30 minutes. And we did not receive a single complaint about 30-minute sessions. I know that we get it in our minds that webinars are typically an hour. Oh, so therefore when we go to a virtual event, every one of our sessions should be an hour long. No, it's entirely different when you go to a virtual environment. And you should know that. People get online and they watch virtual events and they're just bored to death and they leave after 10 minutes. You know, what is it that we have? Our attention span is shorter than a, I don't know, hummingbird or something like that. I don't know what it is, but our attention span is not that long. And when we're looking at something like this, doing a 3-day event where you've got all of these different sessions, we do not want each of these sessions to be 1 hour. Short and sweet. The other part about that that's a great advantage is that I could go to a Jeff Carroll who did the IPv6 core functionality class. And I could ask Jeff to get online with me. And I know Jeff is there right now. Jeff, hi. I know you are watching this. But we could get online with a GoToMeeting or a GoToWebinar, and I could start recording that. And then I could wrap that up with the starting slide and ending slide and put that into the online event. Trying to get a half an hour from your speakers is a lot easier than trying to get them to allocate an hour. Also, some speakers just, they aren't comfortable with that whole 1 hour format, so it's a lot easier. So this is what it looks like, and you can see that we had 10-minute breaks in between each one of these sessions with a 20-minute lunch break originally. We didn't end up doing a 20-minute lunch break. We ran through, kept going, and did not have a single complaint, again, about the fact that these were very short sessions. So originally we were on a 1 hour, and we changed those down because taking classes online, it's tough to keep that concentration going. Here's an example of single and a multi-track schedule. So Core IT ran on a multi-track schedule. We had track 1, 2, and 3 running. We were live on day number 1, or actually we were simu-live, which I will go through that. And then after that, we went into on demand. So all these arrows are on demand. You may just say, I want 1 track only so that you don't have competing sessions taking place. So here's an example of a single track schedule running over 3 days. So it's the same amount of information, but it's running over the 3 days, and then it goes to the on demand. I'll give you an example of one more track idea, one more track layout here, and that is multi-day, multi-track. A multi-day, multi-track schedule would be where you're running tracks 1, 2, 3, but you're running them on multiple days. So maybe, and it could be that those days are only half days. Could be that you're only requiring people to be online, live watching from 9 a.m. to noon, and then from then on they can go around and watch everybody's sessions that are popping into on demand. In Core IT, the sessions that were taught were called Simulive. Simulive means that they're recorded in advance, and then they're played on a schedule. And I'll tell you why that was such a great thing in just a little bit. So content is king. You got to spend most of your time focusing way in advance on that content and getting those phenomenal speakers and those fabulous topics covered. Content is king, okay, but organization is queen here. There are so many moving parts to an online event like Core IT. You have not only speakers and sessions, but you also have booths and you have chat rooms. And in our case, we also had open badging. So open badging is a micro-credential system. And we had Core IT set up so that people could go and watch a session, and then they could go take a quiz on that and achieve an open badge. So checklists, checklists, checklists. And as I mentioned at the beginning, when we finish this presentation today, we're going to send you an email, and that email will have your master checklist document that I use. It's a 5-page document of checklists going through before, during, and after an event. And so that should help you with the organization side of things. Literally at my desk right here, I wish you could see this, but I have this stack of papers. I know that's not very green, but it is a stack of the checklists that were sent out to all of the booth managers to find out who's going to be staffing the booth, what hours. Do you want a chat room in your booth? What resources do you want to have at your booth? You know, certain vendors had a certain look and feel they wanted in their booths. And in fact, we have Betty Dubois with us also today. Hi, Betty. And Betty's booth, you know, we set up a beautiful booth for Betty, but then she goes and sees Saka's booth and says, well, how come my booth is boring compared to your booth? So we went back over to Betty's booth and added a disco ball and fixed up her booth and made it a little more exciting for her. So content is king, organization is queen. Guess what? Compression is the jack. The world is being just changed every day. And when we look at the bandwidth requirements for hosting an event like this, let me just bring up a picture. This image that I'm showing you here, just half an hour ago, 40 minutes ago, I took this picture. This is the TV that is in my office here, and I am showing you how horrific the remote video interview looks here. Look at this guy. Half of his face is missing, and that is because the internet is getting slammed right now, and bandwidth consumption is at a record high right now. So because of that, you've got to pay attention to the bandwidth requirements of your video feeds coming down and the file sizes. Now, when I talk about file sizes, I'm talking about those images, the image of a booth, the background image. We want to compress those, but we want to make sure that we compress them to a point where people don't complain about the quality. So we always want to measure the size of the files and know what compression mechanisms are available for these different files. Remember, we want to go to the minimum acceptable level. Right? Yes, we can go to high def for a video, but when you're showing a talking head, you don't actually need high def video for that. You don't need it to be like that. When you're showing a computer screen where somebody's mouse is going across and clicking on something, guess what? You don't need 60 frames per second. You may not even need 30 frames per second when you produce that. Ideally, you would know how to measure response times. Now, I'm a protocol analyst. I pick up traffic in the background. I look and I can see, oh, wow, look at that. We have got this huge delay, and here, this video is not going to feed very well. Here's an example of what Zoom put out on their requirements. For receiving high def, you've got to have at least 2.5 megabits per second going up and down for receiving a 1080 pixel high def signal. We've got 720 video, which is considered standard definition video, which only takes 1.5 megabits per second up and down. And guess what? That's going to be just fine for a talking head. If you've got a person in that video, and that's primarily what you're showing, you do not need to go to high def for that person. If you have logged into Zoom recently to join or to host a meeting, you've logged into your Zoom account, you probably will notice that they have a message up there talking about conserving or preserving internet bandwidth, and the fact that they are only making high def video available intermittently when you have 3 or more participants on your desktop or mobile device. Okay, that may be a concern unless you're doing talking heads. As I mentioned before, talking heads, you don't need to have high def for that, but you might need high def for computer screens and things like that, and showing off a product, zooming around a product or something like that. Of course, there are other considerations with Zoom right now. I cannot even believe the interview with the CEO of Zoom and the fact that security just never occurred to them. Okay. Here's an example of a problem video stream. This is what it would look like if you used a tool such as Wireshark to capture the traffic and somebody's having a problem with their video stream. Let's see if, is George here with us? Let's see, George. I'm going to go look down. I know you registered. Yes, you are. Hi, George. Nope, not same George. Sorry, darn it. We have George Maynard here, who sent me a video when he could not get the videos to stream well at one point in Core IT. And throughout the time that Core IT was running, we're feeding these videos down to people. And when someone would complain and say, look, the video is glitchy, something's happening with the video, we would ask them to capture the traffic so we could take a look at this. And here's what we saw with George Maynard's traffic right here. With a requirement of 3 megabits per second, minimum requirement of 2.5 megabits per second, we can see right here where there are points where it was dropping below that point. And right here is where everything just sort of fell apart on that day. And so, of course, he did not have the bandwidth that's required for a proper video stream to come down. And many of the people experience this. And no matter what platform you decide to run your webinar or your virtual event on, you're going to experience that these days. And you're going to have to be ready for that, that people are not necessarily going to have great capacity as far as video streaming. So they're going to need to be a little bit patient. Here's what I mean by the talking head versus a screen. Now, if you remember this wonderful, wonderful remote interview that took place, and this gentleman, he's very, suit and tie. Who knows if he's got pants on, but he's got a suit and tie, looks really nice. He's got the beautiful map in the background, and his toddler comes in and starts, dancing in the background, cruising in to talk with dad. So if you've seen that, now, that is running at a very low resolution, and yet people would not complain about that, especially now. If you've spent any time watching the news and you've seen people coming in with remote interviews, you've seen this terrible quality, okay? Taking that same resolution, though, if I were to show you a screen of a computer program like Wireshark, people would complain about that they cannot read that, and yet they will be fine with that talking head at that resolution. They can still see the guy's expressions, what's going on. They can see the toddler coming in and the mom or whatever dragging the kid out. But for a computer screen, that's not going to work. So you need to test the resolution before you throw these things up there into your virtual event. Here's an example of using that computer screen, that Wireshark screen there, and the video in the background has been produced at high def, 1920 by 1080, at 30 frames per second. The file size is 118 meg. But notice that playing this at 15 frames per second is just as clear as at 30 frames per second. This is one of those tools that it looks just fine at 15 frames per second, and therefore, why produce it at a higher frames per second rate? Let's do everything we can to compress that video down before we have to throw it onto the network. Here's what it looks like when we are at standard def. We're at 1280 by 720. To me, that looks muddy, and I don't like it. Whether it's 30 frames per second or 15 frames per second, to me, this would bother me a bit. But this back one here is crystal clear, and I can bring it down to 104 megs. 6 key pre-event decisions for all of you who are looking at hosting an event. Again, we are going to send out the slide set to all of you, so you will have access to this these 6 points here. And they all focus around the platform. The platform defines what your capabilities are going to be. Now, this is unusual right now because of COVID-19. In analyzing a platform, we analyze the response time from the vendors. Back in 2019, when we started working on Core IT, we began by researching the vendors out there. We had one vendor that, I am not kidding you, we contacted them 6 times before we ever got a response, and then the response I did get was from the CEO saying, it looks like we dropped the ball on this. 6 times we reached out to this company to find out what their pricing was. Did they allow self-service, or were they full service only? And it drove us crazy. Now today, COVID-19 sort of changes this because every one of the platform vendors out there is getting slammed with requests because everyone is moving to virtual. All right, features of that platform. Are you going to have sessions? Are you going to have sessions and booths? Does it support live or simu-live? Now the difference between live and simu-live right here for your videos. A live video would be one where you link inside of one of your sessions, you're linking out to Zoom or GoToWebinar or something like that. When you look at a graph of the traffic requirements of live, what you will see is this big, huge jump up here, and it stays pretty high. This is the way, and then as you get to the closing end, then it drops down. But you would see the graph of the bandwidth requirements pretty high. When you use something like simu-live, in simu-live, you go to your presenters and you have them record the sessions first. When you go into the session window, you're playing the recording, the MP4 video in here. You are not feeding live. And when we look at the bandwidth requirements for simu-live, it looks very different than for live. In simu-live, it's buffering, and then quiet, and then buffering the video, and then quiet, and then buffering, and then quiet, and then buffering. This is what we would see. This has a better chance of doing well in heavy bandwidth utilization situations like now than a live session does. simu-live is a lot better right now for trying to get those videos down with quality. But remember, you got to compress those videos. Another advantage of simu-live is that your presenters can be in there answering questions and in the chat area while the session is going on. That's hard to do. For example, I'm doing this presentation right now, but I see questions in the window over here. I would love to go over the questions area and start typing out my answers, but I can't because I'm presenting the session. So for us, for Core IT, we chose to go simu-live because it was like cloning the presenters. So Jeff's presentation could run and he could be in there answering questions at the same time. And that was excellent. Question came up from David. Will this be available for replay on demand? Yes, David, this is all being recorded, and we will send you the link so you can download this recording. Okay, other issues. Interactivity, how much interactivity can you have? I'm going to show you the 9 areas of interactivity within a core IT booth and what they were. Some people had no idea some of these locations for interactivity existed. If you're going to have people, if you're going to have people register for your event, do you want to have the platform registration system, or do you want to use an external registration system and bring it in through an API? That's a question you want to have for your platform vendor. What about if you are charging? What payment processors do they support? PayPal, Stripe, whatever. And then customization. What level of customization does that platform offer? Now, as far as timeline goes, we did ask every one of the platform developers, every one of the platform companies back in 2019 when we were analyzing all the different ones, we asked them, how long will it take to develop an event on your platform? Now, we began back in November of 2019 putting together things like the agenda and the speakers and all that for Core IT, but we didn't start the development of Core IT until 8 weeks out. So the actual Core IT interface didn't get started until 8 weeks out. I think that's a good timeline. That was a really great timeline. We got to do a lot of things we wanted to do with it, but keep in mind there is a learning curve. If you're going to self-service and do it all yourself, you've got to give yourself probably another couple of weeks for a learning curve for the platform if it's self-service. The cost, of course, you have to keep in mind the cost, what your budget is. Are you going to have sponsors? Are you going to have registration fees? Are you going to pay for it? And then as far as the environment goes, the 2 primary environment variables are going to be, are you going to be doing a modern virtual event, a modern look virtual event, or traditional? Core IT was traditional. I'll show you the difference in just a moment. And then, is the platform self-service or full service? Now, self-service means you do it all yourself. That means you are building the images for the booths, you are building the background for the sessions, you are uploading the session videos, you're tagging those videos, you're associating the resources with the videos, you're putting it into the schedule, you're setting it up to go on demand, you're doing everything yourself. In full service, you're actually sending files to the platform company and they're putting it into your event. We wanted self-service. We did not want to have to upload things to a platform and wait a couple days to actually see it and get the feel for it. And then you've always got to ask, do you want an adaptive solution? In other words, should it be playing on mobile devices? Wait until you see the stats on Core IT on how many people came in from iPhones and iPads. It surprised me. It was not what I expected to see before we pulled up our stats. And then analytics. For us, we absolutely wanted Google Analytics in there so we knew where people were coming from when they registered for the event. But you probably also want to have booth analytics that you can give your sponsors after the event. And you definitely want to have session analytics so you know which sessions were strongest, which topics, which speakers, etc. And then there's a great feature that we use with Core IT, which was the geo mapping. So we could see where people came in from all over the world, because we really enjoy the fact that so many of our customers are international. All right, let me take you behind the scenes to Core IT. I am going to show you the statistics that we had for Core IT. Pinkesh came across and said, wow, Simulive is a brilliant idea. You're right, Simulive is brilliant, especially right now where we have this clog in the bandwidth of the internet. We've got everybody just, out there doing videos and downloading everything like that. Simulive is brilliant. It also allowed me to watch the presentation from every single session beforehand. So I knew, in fact, we had one presenter that was very self-conscious because he said he kept saying, And so I could go through with Camtasia and I could remove those ums all the way along and fix that up, and it ran just beautifully once that was done and put up online. So let me give you some of the behind the scenes of Core IT. We began with this vision of what Core IT would look like if it was a physical location. And really the inspiration from Core IT came from that National Science Foundation grant, on which I am a thought leader, where hiring managers said they wanted people to understand core technologies and core tools. And that's the world I live in, so we started this idea of Core IT, the essential tools, key protocols, and then put it in practice. But this is a good idea to start out at the end. If your event were running today and you were walking through it in your mind, what would you want to see? We came up with the 3 tracks, breaking it down with 10 sessions per track. We wanted an open badge center. People would go there for their testing. We wanted the exhibit hall with the vendors' booths in there. And then we wanted just a casual place to hang out as well. In the past, we have done a number of webinars, and GoToWebinar is what we've typically used, and that's what I'm using today. We really enjoy using GoToWebinar, but we're capped at 1,000 people coming in to GoToWebinar. So when we were looking at moving to a virtual event, we knew that GoToWebinar probably, we're not going to try to fit that, square peg in the round hole there. We're going to go to a virtual event platform. Here is the global demographic for Core IT. You can see that we had people coming into the event from all over the world, and that is one of the beauties of having a virtual event online that you have on demand. People were in Core IT at, I'm in Reno, Nevada. People were in Core IT at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning from other places in the world. And it was phenomenal to see that there was no limitation on time of day that they had to come into this event. No travel, no jet lag, no, cost associated with that. Now, we use the Engages platform, and on the platform, it gives you this geo mapping, and we can actually click on one of these little pinpoints here and have a conversation with any one of the people here. So we could click on these and see exactly who was coming in from that country. This is interesting. Now, when we started developing Core IT, our idea was to have 13,000 registrants on Core IT. But a huge chunk of that, the majority of that, was going to be students from colleges. We're going to go out, we're going to reach out to the college system and bring them in for mentoring. Around the time we began hitting the college folks and Cisco Academy to bring in these college kids, all the colleges were shutting down. And so the kids were leaving and going home to hang out there, and then the colleges themselves were shutting their doors. So we kind of backed off on that and thought, okay, we'll reach them at a better time. But we were happy with the 3,380 registrants. And out of those, look at the high conversion rate. 2,321 people actually attended the event. And not only did they attend it, but they came in more than once. So if you add up the numbers here of 1,600 plus 900 plus 700 plus 800, people came back in over and over and over again into Core IT because we ran live on day one, Simulive on day one, and then we were on demand for the next 6 days. If you're going to host an event, I would highly recommend that in your survey for that event, you use something like the Net Promoter Score question here, which is used as a customer satisfaction benchmark. It's a single question that you ask your attendees. How likely, and you could ask your sponsors as well, how likely are you to recommend this event that we put on to your friends, your colleagues, etc.? And if you look up online, there's a way to configure this Net Promoter Score, but basically anything above 0 is good. That's positive. Anything above 50 is fantastic. And anything above 80 is just unreal. So we were thrilled that we came up with an 81.99 Net Promoter Score. It's taken by grabbing the top 2 numbers, and basically you subtract the lower values from that, and then you get rid of the percent sign. And anyway, you can do some research on that. But I would recommend that you have something in there to ask people, would you come back? We were really happy with the open badges. Open badging is micro-credentialing. And we were surprised at how many people, we knew that if we had a ton of college kids in there, we knew they would be jumping at the open badges. But we weren't sure about the existing professionals in the industry. Would they go for open badges, which are micro-credentials that you can go then and put on your website. You can put them on LinkedIn. You can put them on Facebook and say that you have achieved this skill or knowledge set. We awarded over 2,000 open badges, almost 2,500 open badges were awarded. And that was fantastic. We will definitely continue with open badging. People want something to indicate that they have achieved some skill. And let's say you are the maker of chocolate chip cookies and you want to have an event focusing on chocolate chip cookies. You might want to consider badging people on key chocolate chip cookie ingredients. Give them something they can then take and put on their websites and share with the world. It just extends the visibility of your event. A question just came up. What was the cost to attend Core IT? From David. David, Core IT was free. There was no cost to attend Core IT. We did this as a gift to the industry in 2019. We wanted to thank this industry for being so good to us. We had no idea COVID was going to hit. It seemed to be the right thing at the right time, though. So we just happened to hit it just right there to help people out. As far as leads for sponsors and partners, this is an interesting demographic, and you really want to make sure that you catch this to give this information to your sponsors. And you need to know what the average capture of leads is for a physical event also. Let's say we look at this right here, and let's look at WLAN Pros, Keith Parsons' booth right here. Keith was really busy doing other things. His booth didn't have a lot of resources in it, and he wasn't in there chit-chatting in the booth. So this could have been higher if he had the time to put a little bit more into his booth. But he ended up with about 380 leads during Core IT. Knowing that we had over 2,300 people, he had a little over 11, 12% of the registrants or attendees, excuse me. So about 12% of the attendees went into Keith's booth, and he captured the leads for that. If you go to something like a Microsoft Ignite conference and you were to pay all that money, go sit in your booth, bring all your staff out, design your booth, it's about a 3% lead capture at a Microsoft Ignite conference. And we got that information from one of our sponsors that came back just saying, wow, we got 12%. That was a fabulous lead to attendee ratio. And of course, Microsoft's Ignite conference has thousands and thousands and thousands more people, but who knows, maybe we will be growing Core IT and we will have that many. But it is great considering the fact that they don't have to pay all that money to, bring in all the people to the conference center, et cetera. Activity totals. This is interesting also. A lot of people didn't know that they could change their profile photo, even though they were prompted when they first came in. People just don't read those welcome messages, I guess. So we had 103 people that put up pictures of themselves, and 107 times we saw updating of the profiles at least once. There were some people in this group that updated their profile 3 or 4 or 5 times. Question came up, but the funding for Core IT came from NSF. No, we had no funding from NSF. The idea came from the fact that I am a thought leader for an NSF grant. And when I went to a meeting, I heard these hiring managers saying, teach them core skills, teach them core technology. And I brought that back to our company, and that's when we sat around and said, how can we help? Let's do this event called Core IT. So no, we did not have any funding from National Science Foundation. It's just the idea came from my meetings with them. All right, as far as private messages, messaging happening in the background, 304 private individual conversations. And then in Core IT, and I'll show you this in a moment, we had over 5,500 items saved. Now that means speakers that somebody liked and decided to save them, a resource they want to go back to later and download, a session they want to see later, a booth they want to visit later. You can think of this being the swag bag that you carry around at a conference, filled with things that you collect. And we had over 7,000 items downloaded. These are the resources at the booths. These are, I mean, it was just amazing how many items were downloaded. Now, here's the one. For those of you putting on an event, here's an analytic that is timely. I mean, our event ended March 30th. This is how people accessed our online event. I was surprised here. I thought for sure we would have a lot more mobile access here. But look at this. Here we're setting it all up so it looks great on an iPad or a tablet. Well, bummer. We had 7.8% come in from an iPhone. Those must be young people with really good eyes. And then mobile is other than an iPhone that came in on an Android, for example. But almost 80% sitting there at the desktop, which is really the best way to experience a virtual conference. It's from the desktop with a big screen and you're moving things around, you know. As far as the browsers, we had, I know this shows up as 0%, but we had one person come in with Internet Explorer 9. And I hope they took the security sessions on that and get rid of that. Oh, I felt badly. Very low for Internet Explorer 11. Safari, Firefox, and Chrome by far was not only the best performing browser from the attendee standpoint, but it was also the most popular browser coming in. So this is a demographic that I thought was fascinating. This is an analytic that I thought was fascinating to find out what should we be testing on and developing on. How are people coming in? Here's our registration rate for those of you that are going to put on an event. If it makes you nervous opening up your registration 2 months out, that's what we did. In fact, we didn't even open up registration 2 months out. That's a little bit fudged because we didn't talk about it really until the 26th is when we really started talking about it. Very different than when you are doing a physical conference and you start advertising 7 months out and you do your early bird and things like that. Very different in here. At about 1 month out, we were about 1,700 people. And we really, you can see towards the last month, that's when all of the registrations come in. Now that's kind of like very similar to a conference where those last minute people come in. But don't worry about opening up your event 2 months out. That would be fine. So now I want to take you over to Core IT. This is just a slide here. And I have these slides of Core IT in the deck. But I'm going to take you live to Core IT. I'm in as an administrator, so Core IT is no longer open. But I'm in as an administrator in the Engages back end. That is the platform that we work with. It was by far the best platform that we analyzed and the one that we are staying with. So I am in the back end right here, and you can see that we have access to sessions and chat, Exhibit Hall, and Open Badge Center. Now I'm going to go to click on the Exhibit Hall button on top. And you know what I want to do? Actually, I want to move my admin panel out of the way. This is a modern design right here. This would be considered modern, where I don't have little pictures of booths for each of these showing up. Instead, I have a panel in the foreground that just lists the different booths available to me. So we use a modern design for entering the exhibit hall. And then in the exhibit hall for the booths, we used traditional design. But let me just take you over to the sessions area. We ran 3 tracks simultaneously. Some of our sessions were invisible to the users. You can see we did a Zoom webinar test here and a Zoom bandwidth test. Those were not visible to the users. We began each day with a session that talked about how to get around Core IT. We put it in the front of every track. And we allowed people to search for a specific speaker. So if somebody's interested in John Gonder's session, they could click on John Gonder. He's in the in practice track, and there is his session. Click on watch. and it'll bring up the session. Now, you're seeing some things that are only available because I am an administrator. So John said is starting right now. I'm going to stop. But if you look down here, you can see the buffering taking place right down here. There is the buffering. So I'm going to pause his session. We had a Q&A and a chat area. Wow, what we learned about that. Our audience didn't understand the difference between chat and Q&A, and so they put everything into both areas. They chat over in both areas as if they were no different. So we learned on that one. We also learned that a very subtle session survey tab does not get people to take a survey, so we have to hit them separately after the event or at different points during the event, things like that. Question came in, can you expand the width of those track panels? Well, just before I go out, you can go full screen, of course, in the session here. And you can set up what you want your resolution to be. Now, I've got mine manually set for 1080p, but if you set it to auto, your browser is going to figure out what it thinks you can handle, and you may end up with a lower quality video. The question came up, so when we look at this, can I change the width? Yeah, I put these panels up here. I can change them, but I will tell you right now, this is important. I'm only going to keep active, or should I say interactive panels in this. Oops, I should go to right here. I'm only going to put interactivity right here in this screen. I am not going to widen this over to here, and I will show you why in just a moment here. Let me get out of my drawing mode. Let's see. Actually, I wanted to go to the Open Badges Center. Let me click over here. This is how we implemented Open Badges. We actually put in the quizzes here. These hyperlinks open up SurveyMonkey quizzes because SurveyMonkey has grading in their quizzes, and we've used SurveyMonkey before. So we just pop straight out to SurveyMonkey from this location in our Open Badges Testing Center. Here's the chat lounge, and if people didn't pay attention in the event, they may not have noticed that things changed a bit towards the last day, where all of a sudden we had a Core IT wine bottle. Just as if you're walking around the booths at an event, dropping off wine bottles at different booths, we were dropping off virtual wine bottles at the booths. But this was really nice that we could come in here and have discussions with people. This was a good one. Somebody saying abandon TCP, no handshakes because of COVID. All right, so you have to think about who are you going to allow to create new chat lounge areas. Who are you going to let define whether another in practice subcategory can be created. You have that capability of doing that. I'm going to go over to the exhibit hall now. And in the exhibit hall, one of the things I want to mention is that when people are looking at the items, they're figuring out where they want to go. Let's say they look at Packet Detectives. There's a little star here, and that's the swag bag. That's the idea that I'm going to click on this and say, I'm favoriting that booth. I'm busy right now going to sessions, but I want to go back there later. The attendees could go to their profile, and there's followings right here. That's essentially your swag bag, and wait, you see, I have a lot of things that I'm following. So here are the sessions that I was following, and there's Betty's booth, Packet Detectives. And just by clicking that little star, it put it into my swag bag, my followings area there. And then if I want to go over there, I can just simply click on the link. And now that's going to take me to Betty's booth. And as I mentioned before, we gave her a disco ball to liven up her booth a little bit. And there's a little kid in a shark costume. All right, this is a traditional booth layout. This is a traditional booth layout, whereas we use modern for the main exhibit hall. This is a traditional booth. And I want to bring you over to, actually, we're going to go to the Student Union booth, because a lot of people didn't realize how many elements are in these booths. Oh, let me get back through this, sorry, exhibit hall. And I think we still have the Student Union booth up. Let's see if we still, I've been playing around in the back end here, but so here you can see we have Hawaii in the background. We gave it a totally different look, something fun, a hot tub. There's a little dog here, and there's a rabbit. And what people didn't realize is that the rabbits take you places. We had white rabbits all over the event, and people didn't realize that if you click on this rabbit here, we actually are loading a website called Eel Slap, where you get the chance to slap a guy across the face using an eel. So there we go. There are so many things you can do to add humor, and up on the clock, there was another one that took you to another website. So adding that humor, adding that personality, that interactivity, very important in this environment. All right, so getting back to the slide set, I did put in slides showing you the various elements that I just took you to, taking you into a session. There's a modern layout. There's the chat lounge. There's the open badge center. Here's an example of a booth in modern style. This is what it looks like when a booth is in modern style. And I've got to tell you, I think that's incredibly boring, and it doesn't have any personality in it. That's why we wanted to go with a traditional style. We wanted lots of personality. A standard booth takes, for us, it took 6 components. We had a custom skyline in the background, which is San Francisco. We had a custom booth in the center. There's that red area. There's that special interactivity area. I'll show you that in a moment. We had a custom show floor that included the window panes. Down below, we have the ticker tape to navigate to booths. We put in ghost people that fit the environment. Here's why that interactive panel area is blocked off, because we wanted to make it so that the event ran well when it was being looked at on a tablet. Little did we know there would be relatively few people doing this, coming in and looking at it on a tablet, but still we wanted to make it so it functioned properly on a tablet and on an iPhone. Engages, the platform is adaptive, so it looks great on mobile devices and your iPads and tablets. As far as the booths themselves, all of the areas that are getting the red squares right now, these are all interactive areas. Every single one of these areas would cause something to happen. So up in the upper left-hand corner, that's how you could ask a vendor something and all the social media stuff. Here's downloadable objects. Here we had 2 white rabbits in our booth. We had a video playing in the background. We had links to our website. We had a PDF to download, a poster, and then we had the interactivity with our team inside of the booth, chat area, and contacting the staff directly, and then forward and backward navigation inside as well. So, 1 minute till we finish here. Are you ready to host a virtual event? It is a lot of fun, and we would love to help you if you are interested in hosting a virtual event. It has been just a really fun time coming from the physical world to the virtual world. So here are prices. I hate it when people hide prices, and I just want to throw these out there so you know what we're talking about in pricing for event development pricing. This does not include the Engage's platform costs, though. And the pricing varies depending on the number of booths and sessions that you have running. But because you are watching this session, when I send you the slide set, you will see that we have discounts available on all of that pricing, 10, 15, or 20% off. And we can even take the entire event and manage the entire event. Everything from pulling your speaker sessions in to tagging every single little item so that they are searchable, building the custom booths, those personality booths. Custom elements include the registration page. You know, it could be your corporate office. That's the registration page. You could have members of your company actually sitting in the chat lounge together. You could have members of your company in the booths standing in there, or members or your vendors. Working on miscellaneous. There's beautiful Betty sitting there in her roll-up at her booth. And of course, traditional booth designs. We really think the traditional booth is much more entertaining, and now you know about the white rabbits. So keep in mind that if you're going to put on an event, you might want to have something hidden in the background, some functionality, some gamification using something like white rabbits. Here's the platform pricing, in case you're wondering what it costs to support the development. This is the platform pricing, which is separate from development pricing. But if you come to us for development pricing, we can get you special pricing on the platform. So we are a channel partner of Engage's. We've done all our research. We have tested out and worked with other platforms, and we really love what Engage's can do. So again, this is in the slide set that we will be sending to all of you. And we will also send you, don't forget, an email in just a few minutes that will have the virtual event checklist, something for you to look at and go through for pre-event planning, and then execution during the event, and then post-event follow-up. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact our events team at events@chapelu.com. I'm going to keep the recording going, and I'm going to stay here in the webinar because I just want to see if there are some questions that I can answer myself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Notepad. I know that's super simple, but I'm going to bring up Notepad, so if I answer in here, it'll just be listed in Notepad. Let's see. James Santiago. Any thoughts on how to manage an event within a company and the content is IP sensitive? Oh, wow. IP sensitivity. So you've got, it could be PPI information. You could have people's social security numbers coming up, or their medical information, or, you know, intellectual property, as we're saying here. Wow, watch out for Zoom. Take the traces. Man, invite only. Watch the attendee list. Okay, watch the attendees coming in. I would, just because I would be paranoid about this. But keep in mind, you cannot guarantee. So you cannot guarantee, I'll just put this in here. You cannot guarantee protection on this for a virtual event. Oh, I know that people hate hearing this. But you know what? If I'm hosting an event and I've got intellectual property information I'm giving out during that event, I could have, I'm sure that we're running on TLS. I'm sure everything's encrypted. I've looked at the traces to verify that. I'm watching these attendees that are logging in, but you know what? I'm not in the room with those people. I'm not looking at the fact that somebody's projecting this on an overhead and there are 16 friends coming into the room that are watching that information. So unless you have a way to watch your attendees, there is no way to guarantee that. All right? So that is where, in a company environment, we would have a closed physical viewing area. In other words, this conference room and this conference room, this office and this office, they're allowed to play the event. They are let into the event, but it is not open to everybody in the company. It's only the ones where we can guarantee that viewing area is secure. Wow, that's a great question. That is a great question. Yeah, you can use a VPN, James. Certainly, absolutely, a VPN to get in. You want to make sure that your communications are secure. You just don't trust the other person at the end. I don't trust the attendee that they're not just, well, obviously they're not sitting in a coffee shop these days. But that would be a concern if we didn't have COVID-19, that they'd be sitting in a Starbucks and people behind them, around them could see what was going on. Question, didn't quite get the pricing. George, we will send you the slide set that has all the pricing in it. Jeff Carroll, thank you so much for being in here. Yeah, great tool for academics. Absolutely. You know what? It's been really great to share the analytics with you. Let's see. You used Brave. Okay, so James, you're so chatty. James was logged in all 4 days to Core IT, and he used Brave as his browser for that. In fact, I bet you watched the tour session where Andrew Lumen talked about Brave and using Brave. Let's see. Are you planning on having another Core IT event this year? Great question. We will definitely be hosting something. We will definitely host another event, or 5 or 10, who knows? I won't put 100. Sorry, I'm sure my team was just jagging at that. But we will definitely be hosting another event. And if you would like to know when that is, if you go to chapeluniversity.com, the first people we tell about everything is our newsletter group. Newsletter, I can spell that. Sign up for the newsletter. If you haven't signed up for it, you get 5 free labs for Wireshark when you sign up. So it's awesome. But yeah, we have already started talking about that. If you have ideas, please feel free to let us know. Oh, Keith Parsons. Hi, Keith. Keith Parsons is in here from WLANpros.com, did the 802.11 core functionality session. Excellent. Let's see, any other questions that didn't get answered? Good questions for Simulive. Can you pause the playback while questions are answered? Well, there's really 2 answers to that one. In Simulive, it runs as if it is live the first time it runs. So when somebody comes in and looks, and I'll just bring over Core IT here again, when it is in a Simulive scenario, this would all run on a schedule. Instead of seeing on demand up here at the top, you would have the times of day. When you're running in Simulive and it's based on times of day, so Nmap, okay, it's running right now because it's a lunchtime presentation or something like that, then you cannot pause it because it's simulated live. So it's going to run all the way through. But we set it up in engages so that after each one of these ran live the first time, it would immediately pop over to on-demand mode. And then you can pause it all you want and stop it and rewind and do anything you want. But when you're in Simulive, remember, you're simulating the live experience for the user. And again, Simulive is great because, boy, you can check the quality of the video, make sure that it sounds good, and you can compress it in advance, go down to 15 frames per second if you want. So many advantages to going Simulive. You just cloned your presenters because they're not only presenting, but they're also answering questions. Wow, it looks like our team answered a lot of questions. A lot of great questions came in. I think we'll probably take these questions and build a Q&A document, clean up a nice Q&A document, and we will send that out to you as well, so you can just read through what people's questions are.